Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. This is Ofa with another good one. In the last video, we got the ABS wheel speed sensors replaced up front and we were left with a triangle light on the instrument cluster. So since that time, I have been driving the car almost 300 miles now. So I've gotten a lot familiar with it and you want to stick around for this video because it's going to be an interesting one. So let's dive right into it. In order to address the triangle warning on the instrument cluster, it's important to first and foremost understand what the light means. The triangle light is for the traction control system, a system that prevents excessive wheel spin under acceleration. This is particularly important to prevent the wheels from losing their grip on the ground while the vehicle is accelerating. The TCS system can be temporarily turned off by pressing the button to the left of the steering wheel that says TCS off. Once the key gets recycled, the system should be reactivated automatically. I felt the triangle warning was going to go off after I drove the car a bit, but to my surprise, after driving a bit, I got another warning that said TCS. So I knew that definitely something was wrong. Upon scanning the system, I got a brake logic failure code. And after a quick search on the internet, I realized that the traction control system had to be reset. Fortunately, I was able to carry out the reset using my old scan tool, and everything now works fine. So right now, I'm going to cycle the key and see how the lights should operate. So here, I just inserted the key, turned the ignition on. All the lights should go off to ensure that the system is operational. Moving ahead to the turn signal issue, I remember while inspecting the vehicle before buying it, I noticed that the turn signals were working, but the hazards were not working. So I felt it was going to be something very trivial, like possibly a blown fuse, and everything was going to be fine. But a few days after I had paid for the car and it was at my home, I found some extra wires and relays behind the cover right here, and it was very obvious to me that a direct connection had been made to make the turn signals work. So upon diving in deeper and checking the fuses which are located behind this cover, I found out that a lot of fuses had been replaced with just wires, and I was very worried because I knew that couldn't be good. Obviously, something had caused many of the fuses to pop, and instead of having them replaced with proper fuses, wires had been put in place. So immediately I took apart the custom connection for the turn signals, and I replaced all the wires with fuses, the recommended fuses down here. And to my surprise, or I wouldn't say I was surprised, the turn signals still didn't work. So a common issue with these deals with the turn signal relay, which is located behind this plastic panel over here. And I actually got a new relay, but still didn't work. So I had to troubleshoot further. It proved to be quite difficult and demanding because most people had issues with only the turn signal relay, but in my case, because of all the strange connections and all the funny experiments that had been done to the car, I had to dig much deeper. So fortunately, I found some forum online and a troubleshooting guide actually, which ran through the whole process step by step in testing the various components, the turn signal relay, the wiring to all the turn signals front and back and all that. And then eventually everything pointed towards the fuse box. And it was then I realized that the fuse box wasn't just a junction of wires and fuses, but actually had some electronic components on there that could easily get burnt if too much current passed through them. So I decided to take apart the fuse box. I had to take off the panel down here and decided to take apart the fuse box. Here's what I saw. Taking the cover off the fuse box, here's what we have. Immediately, I noticed some black electrical tape covering up some area. That seemed really strange to me. The area is right there, yes. So, upon taking the tape off, I realized that the circuit board was damaged in that area and someone had tried to repair it by using some electrical wire to bridge the conductive path. So definitely the fuse box was damaged. Fortunately, I was able to get a used one that belonged to a 4-cylinder EX model. Upon checking all the various components, everything looks similar, so got the fuse box replaced, and lo and behold, the turn signals now work. This is the cover of the fuse box I bought. Had quite a number of connectors, but the good thing about them was they were all unique, so had quite a number of them back here, and space wasn't so much, but got everything done. Obviously lots more connectors in the front right here, and so I swapped the relays and everything over, connected it back up, and right now everything works. By the way, this is space for the turn signal relay right here. So here's what the fuse box looks like without any connections. So I got it replaced. It wasn't so expensive, and right now the turn signals work. For the hazards, I don't need to have the key in the ignition. So once that's depressed, yes, the hazard lights work. And then turning that off, and then turning the ignition on and testing for the turn signals. So right now I have the ignition turned on, left signal, and then the right turn signal. So I was really glad that that was over, because electrical problems can be quite easy to resolve, but the whole troubleshooting process could take a very long time, because they usually require an in-depth understanding of how the various components of the electrical system work together to make up the whole system. So that was the turn signal issue. With the turn signal issue out of the way, I was really excited and decided to do some more electrical work. So I decided to tackle the cruise control buttons located on the right here. So I took out the switch easily, tested all the connections using some information I got online, everything checked out, and then I decided to take apart the clock spring, which is located behind the steering wheel. So not so much in the clock spring is basically made up of a ribbon, a long ribbon that coils up as you turn the wheel to maintain electrical connection between number of contacts. This is what we have with the steering wheel taken off. So looking around it, that is the clock spring right there that I'm tapping on right now. So as you rotate the steering wheel, keeps contact. That's the steering wheel, by the way. So I discovered that this car has two ribbons in there. One of them was obviously broken. So I got my soldering iron out and got it repaired. So right now the cruise control works. Obviously, you can see cruise main on there. As you can see, that's cruise main. Obviously, I can't get cruise control to engage. The vehicle has to be moving at over 25 miles per hour for that to work. So pushing the button on the steering wheel right here, I can turn it off and on. So the cruise control works. That's another win. So now on to VTEC. In order to address the VTEC issue, it was very important for me to understand what VTEC was. So what's the meaning of VTEC? Variable valve timing and lift electronic control. In simpler terms, the vehicle computer activates a solenoid which allows engine oil to pass through certain passages, and once the oil gets to the intake cams, allows the part of the intake cams to lock up, thereby activating some lobes on the intake cam to allow much more air to flow through. With more air, more fuel can be introduced into the cylinders, and that would mean more power. So that's how more power is obtained from VTEC. On this engine, I found out that VTEC activates at around 5,000 RPM. That's quite high considering this car has a red line of about 6,500 RPM. This point made me realize that there was something fundamentally wrong and not just with the VTEC system. So I decided to go back to the basics and check the fundamentals of the engine, namely the fuel, air, spark, and compression. I decided to start off with a compression test. This would determine whether there was any mechanical damage to the engine. So taking out the spark plugs, they didn't look so bad, although they were old and a little bit crusty with carbon. The compression test results were much better than I anticipated. With the results as shown, I was really excited as all the pressures were good and there was no issue with compression. Next, I carried out a fuel pressure test, and as you can see from the gauge, I obtained a pressure of about 57 psi while idling, and this fell within the normal operating range of 55 to 63 psi. Next on the line was air. I replaced the engine air filter with a brand new one to ensure maximum airflow. Before doing that, I examined the old air filter and it wasn't bad at all. After carrying out the tests, I was still without a solution as to why the car lacked power and VTEC wasn't engaging. So I went on to the next thing and felt probably the catalytic converters were getting clogged. So I took them out and examined them, all three of them. Ideally, I should have run a back pressure test on the exhaust system, but I didn't have the appropriate gauge. After careful examination, I realized that the catalysts were not clogged at all. But before I returned them on the car, I decided to do something different. With the crossover pipe disconnected, I decided to check for the exhaust pressure coming out from both banks of cylinders. By doing this, I realized that the pressure from the rear bank of cylinders, that is those closer to the firewall, was relatively weak compared to the bank closer to the radiator. So a lot of things started going through my mind. Obviously, our compression test results were good all across the cylinders and nothing stood out in the rear bank of cylinders. It wasn't long before I thought about ignition timing, that probably the timing was retarded on the rear bank of cylinders, and there's only one thing that linked all the cylinders on the rear bank, the timing belt. So I decided to dig in. So months back, when I took the engine on this car apart to check out the timing components, I noticed that this portion of the belt right here was loose, and back then I attributed it to a stretched timing belt, but I was definitely wrong. Here was the culprit right here, a bad timing belt tensioner. So a few weeks back, I got a used one, but obviously this is it right here. It's all leaky and full of oil and obviously not maintaining proper tension. In fact, it made the engine sound really weird with lots of chattering noises. So how did all that affect VTEC and the overall car? Well, with all the timing marks lined up right here, I have a mark on the cam right there that lines up with the mark at the back of the cam gear right here. I also have same thing for the rear bank of cylinders right there. Then going down to the crank, I also have the arrows lined up, as you can see. So definitely all the timing marks are spot on. Because I'm yet to install the tensioner, this part of the belt is still very loose. The job of the tensioner is to ensure this portion gets tightened as the engine operates and also maintains constant tension. So with the tensioner bad, it would allow the cam gear at the back right here to spin, and that would distort the relative position of the two cam gears right here, and that would definitely lead to the belt being slack in the middle, so that the timing of the rear bank of cylinders will be off. And obviously with wrong timing, you can have sluggish acceleration like we've been experiencing. So that was the issue all along. This is actually a used tensioner I bought a few weeks back, thinking I could get away with buying a used parts, but Unfortunately, this is what I got, and this was different from the previous tensioner in that the previous tensioner was quiet but didn't hold tension. This maintains proper tension when the engine is cold, and then when it gets hot, it starts making all the chattering noises, and obviously isn't any good. So let's open the box and see what we have in there. So opening the box, or written on the box right here, we have Deco hydraulic timing belt tensioner. That's the part number. Going for about $20 on Amazon, and it's all brand new. So I expect best performance. So that's an instruction sheet, and then have another box that has the tensioner. Yeah, this was in there. And then open this up. Yeah, we have the tensioner right here. Yeah, really packed. And obviously has the pin. So let me get this out. So taking it out, this is what we have. We have a label on there that says do not remove pin until after installation. Yeah. So this is the new tensioner that's going to solve all our issues. So there it is. So I'll be fastening it onto the engine using the 210mm bolts right here. It sits in this position, and then once all the timing marks are double checked again, I'll pull this pin and then turn the engine over a couple of times, and then we'll put everything back together. So let's get that done. 711181. That was the part number for the Timken crankshaft seal for this 2300 code V6. I seized the opportunity to get the crank seal replaced since the previous one I installed on there was still leaking. And just like that, the Timken seal is installed. So right now I'm going to put everything back together, and we're going to get to replace the most important component that has been causing us a lot of grief. So right now I have the timing tensioner installed and the pin pulled. Here's the pin right here. I'm going to keep this just in case I need to take the system apart again. I'll use this to reset the tensioner back in the compressed position. So there it is. I've spun the engine over twice, and all the timing marks are still spot on. So I'm going to put the covers back on, and then we'll proceed. With the timing belt tensioner installed, I also put the timing covers back on, and also the serpentine belt tensioner. This is the belt I had on there. I must confess, this is the worst belt I've ever seen. It's really bad. All the tracks are broken, and some of them actually have chunks of rubber missing. So fellas, please carry out your regular inspections. Don't allow your belts to get this bad, because it could actually break and leave you stranded by the roadside. So I'll be replacing with a used one that seems to be in extremely good condition. So I hope this lasts. So right now I'm going to get it installed, and then we'll proceed. To prevent dirt and debris from damaging the serpentine belt, I also installed the cover under the engine. Obviously we can't see the belt right now. It's protected by this plastic shield. It runs all along the bottom to the other side, as you can see. Yeah, it goes up to the other side over there. So with this, the serpentine belt should last a very long time and not get deteriorated like the other one. After doing all that, I took the Honda out for a test drive, and it still fell flat on its face at around 5,000 RPM. I could definitely hear VTEC kicking in at 5,000. Made it all the way to 5,500 RPM. So I knew I was making progress, but definitely I wasn't there yet. Looking at the tachometer on there, the red line is at about 6,700 RPM. So I was making progress, but it wasn't there yet. The symptom I was getting pointed towards a restricted exhaust system, and The major items along the exhaust that could get clogged were the catalytic converters. I took the three of them out and examined them carefully because I don't have a back pressure tester, and I felt they were not clogged. So what could have been wrong with the car? Well, let's go under the hood. So here we are under the hood. I decided to take out this catalytic converter right here to get the substrate material out. So I did that and bolted the case back on there, and I took it for another test drive. I noticed that the car had much better acceleration, but it still fell flat on its face at higher RPM. I was really running out of ideas because all the signs of the engine, the various tests I carried out, from the compression, checking out the spark plugs, checking the timing belt area. We also replaced the timing belt tensioner. Everything checked out good. The spark plugs were old, but definitely they weren't that bad, and I wasn't getting any misfires. So I decided to do something else, which was at the back of the car. On the V6 Accord, we have two mufflers, one on each side. This is one here, and that's the other one. So while the engine was running, I checked for using my palm, I checked for the amount of airflow that was coming through there, and I noticed that the muffler on the driver's side was flowing more than that on the passenger side. So I was like, wow, possibly the muffler on the right side was clogged, and that was why the vehicle was falling flat on its face. Because I had patched the muffler several months back and I was supposed to replace it back there, I decided, okay, it was time to get a replacement. So I actually did. This is the old muffler right here. Here's the patch I was talking about. I actually got a sheet of metal to cover this area because there was a large hole around there. So this was my repair work, and I felt it was time to have it replaced and everything will be fine. So as usual, I cut it out right here, and it's common practice whenever you're replacing a muffler or an exhaust part with the part cut off, you start the car and have a feel of what the car would sound like without such part. So I did the same, and to my surprise, the car was quiet. I was like, wow, that was quite interesting because I felt the car was supposed to get much louder, and obviously that's the purpose of the muffler. So it turned out I wasn't getting much exhaust gas into the muffler in the first place, so definitely it wasn't the muffler that was clogged. Something had to be going on right in there. I revved the car a couple of times and it sounded quite good actually without the muffler, so I knew the exhaust system was clogged. So with the muffler cut out this way, I got my bus scope and looked in there, and to my surprise, there was lots of stuff in there. Obviously, because one of the mufflers flowed a lot more than the other, the restriction in there had to be close to the point where the pipe split into two. So using my bus scope, I decided to take a look from where I had the muffler cut off. So without going too far, we can definitely see that there's something in there, but what it was, can't really tell. So using the bus scope, I was able to figure out how far in the restriction was. So initially I tried to get it out using some wire, but after spending a few minutes and I decided I had to do a minor surgery and make a small incision. Here's the window I cut open in the pipe. I did it this way to make sealing it back up much easier. So let's take a closer look. Fellas, this is exactly what I saw in there. I was short of words. I mean, how did this get in there? And this had been there all this while. causing the engine to choke out and possibly led to the head gasket failure initially from the previous owner. I was just too much in shock. At the same time, I was glad I found this in time because this could definitely, like I said earlier on, have taken out the engine, even if I had replaced with a much better engine. So that was just what it was. I can't really tell what this is. It kind of looks like some wire mixed with stuff. Uh, well, if you have any idea of what this is, leave me a comment below. I'd like to find out the thought process of whoever put this there. Leave me a comment below. So with that mess out of the way, I decided to take a look at the split on the pipe to ensure that everything looked good. So obviously from the upper portion, we can see some light and guess everything was now clear. I also used the bore scope to check the length of the muffler section, the mid pipe section, and to ensure there were no more surprises in there and everything looked good. So put everything back together. With the opening welded back on there, here's the muffler replaced. Everything is looking good. That's the joint right there. I started it up and the exhaust flows much better right now. So took it for another test drive. It drove good, but gas mileage was really bad because of the catalytic converter we took out from the front. So right now I'll need to have that replaced because the car kept on throwing a code for the catalyst being efficient even before I took it out. So that definitely needs to be replaced. So how does it drive now? It drives a lot better, I must confess. So I believe once I get the catalyst replaced, it's going to drive a lot better and gas mileage will be good. So that's what's been going on with the Honda Accord. So in the next video, I hope to have had the catalyst replaced and then would go for a test drive together. It's been a long road and I think we're almost there. The car is I think a California emission spec, so these things can be quite sensitive if improper parts are used. So fellas, hope you enjoyed the video. That's what's been going on. The Honda Accord restoration is definitely coming to an end. In the next video, I hope to take it out on the highway and show you what this car can do, even with the engine looking all old and worn out. So if you found this video useful, don't forget to subscribe and leave me a like below. Also, hit the notification bell so that you get notified whenever I upload a new video. So fellas, don't give up. Just keep at it. With research and hard work and definitely optimism, you would achieve your dreams. So till next time, have a nice day. Bye.